Start.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good morning to everyone. I, Priyanka Chaudhary, along with my co-host Nihal Raj, welcome you all on this Sunday's special session on Biodiversity Challenge. We are very honored today to have Mr. Kedar Bide with us for the discussion. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank
So
you.
let, Thank you, sir. So let me give you all a brief intro about this, sir. Sir is a managing director at NatureWorks, and his company is involved in fine arts, archival printing, photography services, community initiatives, and environmental services. Kedar sir is also an ophthalmologist and presently works on snake bite death mitigation through his campaign Zero Bites with other global and national partners. He has been instrumental in two first reports of snake species from India, Sindal-headed snake from Rajasthan and Kalbaki pit viper from Arunachal Pradesh. He has also received a national award for his work on snake conservation from Indian Herpetological Society. So now my co-host Nihal Raj will carry on further. Nihal, over to you.
Thank you, Priyanka. So apart from this, Sir is also a great photographer and his photography work has been used in many books and publications on wildlife and nature in India as well as abroad. He has been a judge for nature and wildlife themes in various photography competitions, including for more than 5 years, as well as main mayor photography competition in 2016. Sir is also an associate member of the International League of Conservation Writers. He keeps exploring nature through his photography, loves scuba diving, off-roading, and occasionally known to write poetry through his blog Beyond Salvage on eBlogger. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome the man of the hour, Mr. Kedar sir, to share his experiences and give his insight. Sir, the podium is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Nihal. Thank you, Priyanka. And thanks, Shilpa, also. When we started discussing about what topic I should present, you are going through a lot of Sunday presentations. You have covered topics on snakes. You have already covered a topic on urban biodiversity as such. As a biodiversity cell, you do a lot of work on urban biodiversity in Symbiosis campus as well as Pune. So when I started thinking about the questions which I always have regarding urban biodiversity, so I thought of sharing those questions with you. The answers may not be right or wrong, or I am not at all deciding whether I am right or wrong in this whole discussion. It's just about opening up certain different directions of your thought process when we talk about urban biodiversity conservation and what exactly happens in the context of urban biodiversity. So I will just share my screen and then we'll talk about. So if you look at the definition of urban biodiversity in any of the, Wikipedia, Google, or directory, it says that urban system which is close to natural biogeographic settings. Second, it also says species-rich environment which is compatible with human well-being in an urban setting. Okay, so I have specifically highlighted these two words: natural biogeographic and a compatible with human well-being. When we talk about urban biodiversity, these two close to natural biogeographic settings as well as compatible to our well-being is included into those urban biodiversity. The third is always a diverse habitat that is flora and fauna. This is a complete kind of a picture of urban biodiversity. Now, before we go further ahead, I want you to concentrate only this last line. When you talk about urban biodiversity ecology, always remember in ecology, everything is connected to everything else. Keep writing this sentence without any comma, without any full stop, without any, capital, small, anything. Just keep writing. That's the ecology, Everything is connected to everything else. There is no standalone actions in ecology. So when you look at the urban context, the different ecological principles which we need to always think about is what is the structure of your biodiversity? What's the flora and fauna in that biodiversity? What is the species dynamics? You also need to look at what are the functions this biodiversity carry forward to in urban settings. Do they do certain kind of nutrient cycling? Is there is a energy flow dependent on that particular flora and fauna? Then there are these different food webs and food chains into the biodiversity. Also, species diversity and number of each species also constitutes to the your whole constituents of biodiversity. Then there are maybe ecological services that may be preserved or also due to loss due to urbanization, like a pollination and other services. They can also get lost in a urban biodiversity context. Now I want to kind of visualize, this is a story. A leopard makes a lightning move like a golden arrow piercing through the bamboo thicket, and the spotted deer never knew what struck it. A leopard emerges triumph with a deer in its jaw. A cacophony of tree-pies giving background score to the whole drama. When you visualize this scene, where do you think you are, Shilpa, Priyanka? And can anyone tell me what do you think which place you are when you see this scene?
I exactly have experienced this in Panna with Bhavna and Vidya. So I will
Okay,
immediately think about
good.
Panna Tiger
So
Reserve
you'll
in the
think
Madhya
about a
Pradesh.
Panna Tiger Reserve, right? Anybody else? Where do you think you can visualize this scene? Okay,
Right.
Sir, some national parks also, like
some
Kaziranga
national
Sir,
National
parks,
Panna
Park.
or Rajasthan?
Panna or some Ranthambore in Rajasthan, right?
Outside the village skirts,
Yes, sir.
somewhere like that.
Or sir,
Outside the village,
Bandhavgarh maybe.
outside Bandhavgarh. Okay. Now I am showing you another scene. Okay, just change this same scenario with certain words. Leopard makes a lightning move like a golden arrow moving across the playground, and the dog never knew what struck it. A leopard emerges triumph with a dog in its jaw. A cacophony of party songs giving background score to the whole drama. Now, where can you visualize this?
Sir, on outskirts of a city or maybe a city.
Yes. So, do you think this is a same kind of wildlife? See, this is a story. This is a story. What is your reaction when I show you these both stories? Anything,
When
Shilpa, comes to your mind?
Yeah, the first when I see, I'll feel wow, and the second one when I'll see, I'll be bit worried.
Why?
On the mostly for both the parties, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe animal may get hurt by human beings because it is in the urban city or outskirts of the city.
Hmm.
So for the animal sake also, I'll be very much worried, and I'll be worried for the humans also, or domestic animals that they may get hurt or already have gotten
So,
hurt.
so Shilpa, in our emotion, do you think this is a normal situation and this is an abnormal situation,
Oh, that's a difficult question.
right? So, yeah, because this is nothing is abnormal in both the situations. Both are very normal situations. Only there is a replacement of a food cycle. Instead of deer, here is a stray population of animals. But the predator is same, but the behavior also change and adapted to the urban localities. So when you started thinking about any kind of management practices with this, you cannot carry on with the same management practices which we do into places like tiger reserves or national parks. In urban settings, the biodiversity is little kind of different, and that's why we always keep telling that when we humans have altered this whole settings, because of urbanization process. But we always say that we have encroached on these lands, but after altering all these lands, there is a wildlife which has got adopted to these settings, and they know how to survive here, they know how to thrive here, and they know how to find their prey, they know how to find their mates in these environments. So this is, for me personally, is a kind of a new kind of wildlife which I always think about. Now, if you look at this whole wildlife in urban settings, there can be birds like pigeons, mynas, sparrows, owls, kites, crows, parakeets. There can be bats, rats, squirrels, civet cats, mongoose, monkeys. There can be snakes, lizards, geckos, crocs, turtle, tortoises, jackals, leopards, also found in urban settings. So when we talk about a new kind of wildlife in urban settings, it's all native, non-domestic animals found in cities. And probably many of people actually don't think that there is a non-domestic animals found in cities. Now, if you look at my city where we stay in Mumbai, it's pretty defined with its flamingos or leopards all around, around HGNP. But then there are enough rats in every city. There are enough pigeons in every city. There are langurs and bonnet macaques coming into the cities for feeding. Snakes are always there all around. There are a lot of butterflies found in the cities, and they also now started laying eggs in your kitchen gardens or in your balcony gardens. So there are multiple kind of wildlife found in a urban settings into where we stay. Now, the whole subject of studying this wildlife in an urban setting is called as a scene urbanization. This is a wildlife populations adapted to living in an urban habitat. They may show specific behavioral differences. These adjustments for species survival within the specific conditions of the urban environment is called scene urbanization. So basically, you can think about this is a response of a wildlife to ecological changes associated with a urban development. Now, our urban development alter the conditions required for species to survive in natural environment. But at the same time, it also creates empty ecological niches that attract other species adapted to such conditions. Now, what are the different urban adaptations which we have seen in different wild species? One is about movement and activities. Now, the best example is the flamingos of Mumbai. Many years back, they used to be migratory birds only used to come in winter in some of the water bodies around Mumbai. But throughout the years, which what we have found out is that maybe due to sewage of the city, or maybe due to the water which is released out of thermal power plant, which is in a more warmer in nature, then migration many of the times they are year-round urban residents. So this happens with many kind of wildlife where they change their movement patterns or activity patterns adapting to urban localities. Now, in a reproduction cycles of a wild animals, in a city, there is a new assemblage of nesting sites and materials, maybe naturally found or maybe anthropogenic in nature, where we decide that we need too much bird nesting. We need a lot of bird nesting, so we put bird nest all around. So there is a lot of assemblage of nesting sites and materials. What it results into higher birth rate due to more reproductive cycles and greater offspring survival due to consistent supply of anthropogenic food source. If you look at again back to the rural kind of setup or the national park kind of setup, uh, the reproduction rate is resulting to the food available, shelter available. In urban localities, certain species found more nesting sites, more food available, so they reproduce also more, particularly say pigeons or squirrels. Third point which we have to look at adaptations of wild animals into urban localities is tolerance of humans. They get habituated to human presence and lose their natural wariness. Fourth is a diet and nutrition. Feeding strategy changes of animals, new source of food, like you saw the leopards surviving on dog population, stray dog population. So that is a change into feeding strategies of animal because there is a new source of food available. Survival and mortality also changes completely. There is a new range of obstacle for survival. Like in a pristine jungles, an animal has to probably only worry about predators. But in cities, they have to also look at they don't get killed under the vehicles. There are different predators, like your stray domestic animals also becomes a predators for them. So there is a complete new range of obstacle for survival for wild animals into the cities. Now, when I talk about challenges to this whole urban biodiversity context and the subject which we talk about, common people living in the cities, they are unable to identify common wildlife species. they does not know why a particular species occur around them or how to deal with them. Third is they don't have understanding of different interrelationship between people and wildlife. Like we see a lot of people feeding birds, throwing grains all around for pigeons, but that one activity actually creates so many different interactive relationship between different animals and their survival. Then there are a lot of misconception about the urban wildlife. Like few are snakes are poisonous, abandoned hatchlings need to be rescued or reunited, feeding wildlife is necessary activity, wild predators do not exist in urban areas. This kind of lot of misconceptions is into the people's mind about the urban wildlife. Now there are different anthropogenic challenges for urban wildlife, which is a part of urban biodiversity. We all urbanites, we always feel to have a reconnect with the natural world. We construct green environments, we install feeders, nest boxes, we do a lot of wildscaping around where we stay. But this leads to a paradox in our urban wildlife management. We create green designs to encourage wildlife, and once the habitat is provided, the animals will come. When too many animals respond to this habitat, we call it a nuisance and we want somebody to act on it. The third, infrastructure for urban wildlife management is completely missing today. There is a very less local data checklist available. There is something called City Biodiversity Index. Not many cities in India developing or working on City Biodiversity Index. Thus, the biggest anthropogenic challenge to urban wildlife management is emotional actions dominate our urban wildlife management. See, like I will tell you different situations of urban wildlife or a biodiversity of urban areas is snakes into houses, conflict with human life, animals stuck in a net, again conflict with the animal life. There are situations where we get calls or the people keep complaining about animals coming into their society or into their gardens. Civet cat comes, barn owls are there all across. Snakes are always found in gardens. The beehives and honeybees, because of the moisture and other things which is kind of favorable habitat to them, they keep building the beehives into a tall rise. Also, you always get some kind of injured animals through vehicular traffic. Then we have a lot of rescue organizations and rescue centers keep rescuing these animals and treating them and releasing them back in a while. So all these animals which I call about, they all are sometimes some rescue organization have rescued and rehabilitated back. So what are these whole impact and challenges happens because of this? Introduction of species. When you look at complete urban biodiversity, which is always risk of introduction of new species from two sources. One is a rescued release animals and second is a exotic animals. Lot of people keep lot of different exotic animal as a pets, like a lot of snakes and fishes and turtles, which are exotic in nature, birds. They have been kept in a pet, and many times they release it or it accidentally gets released out, and that kind of species is introduced into urban environment. What it happens is that because of that, there is a always increase in the number of local species, which connected to the competition with resources. With that competition with resources, it changes animal behavior and interactions with other. So probably the animals which knows how to hide around us and live their life, because of all these changes happening, they start getting into our homes or we start seeing them more. Then there is always a development of new interactions between these animals. So overall, in our human altered environments with lot of good and bad practices, I'm not saying everything is bad or everything is good, but many times we do something which we don't know what will be the reaction to our actions. So our ecological balance is many times completely disrupts. So generally speaking, what we all can do, which we all are doing, Shilpa and her biodiversity cell is doing the same thing what I'm talking here for quite years now, is a public education program that informs urbanites about wildlife around them, media sensitization about wildlife interactions in urban setups, citizen science, study different wildlife, their interactions and ecological cycles around your localities, documenting changes in ecological interactions around us, probably creating neighborhood watch for such changes. Because if you know what's happening all around you, you can suggest action plans and remedial actions. Also, somewhere we need to start resisting removal of species due to perceptive risk and danger, either to human or to species. So that emotional quotient which I was talking about sometimes takes precedence towards actually what is needed for that ecology. If we are looking at how can we think about more proactively for the urban biodiversity, I think we need to create laws for exotic species, strict guidelines for captivity, complete ban on releasing them. The biggest example of this is a red-eared turtle, Snyder turtle, which has been released and now taken kind of, in most of our lakes, small rivers, water tanks. Now you will find the redneck turtle, which is an exotic species. It was always into the pet trade, but after releasing now, it has naturalized into our area and creating competition for the local species survival. Managing stray population of domestic animals also needed a lot, because the whole biodiversity also depends on that. Many of these stray populations keep impacting the wildlife population, the non-domestic animal population into area. Third, managing source of anthropogenic food sources. There are so many food available for wildlife all around us because of our efforts of blessings, and we keep feeding wild animals because of our emotions. So complete ban on feeding of wild animals. There need to be a SOPs for rescue, capture, rehabilitation. There need to be more rescue centers in urban localities. There need to be more research and studies of our surroundings in urban settings. Networking, sharing practices need to be also there between different groups and organizations who are working into the same field. Now, with all this way forward, I want to just ask you guys, and this is going to be a little interactive, so you all can actually either raise a hand or just unmute yourself and tell me. So one of the things which I would like to ask, can somebody tell me what is the relationship between plantation along highways and road kills? Anybody? Do you think is there any relationship between plantation along highways and road kills?
Never thought of it, because only road constructions and road kills. Plantation का कभी I never had
I
given a
lost you,
thought.
Shilpa. Can't hear you.
So I never had thought about plantation.
Anybody else want to, till Shilpa comes back? I think she must have lost her mate. Anybody wants to tell me, is there any relation between plantation along highways and road kills?
Sir, it can reduce the maintenance needs and the cost of the road, and also provide safety for vehicles. And it will also like improve the overall driving experience for and the roads.
Okay. So
Sir,
when you
the
think,
soil can also be like strongly binded together, maybe.
okay, so this is what you are talking about, that whether we need plantation along the highways or not, right? So you need plantation. So now my next linkage is there is a linkage between increasing number of road kills and a plantation along the highways?
Is it because animals are hiding behind? I mean, they are around the plantation and then they don't understand where road starts, and that is because they are getting killed more and more.
Yes. So we don't think when we plan plantation that what kind of plantation and what kind of other future challenges it can provide us, you know. And this I'm not talking about highways throughout the national parks or anything. These are about the highways in the city, where we plant big canopy trees and a lot of indigenous trees like fruit bearing trees. So is it possible for us, I'm just thinking, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong here. Is it possible for us not to plant a fruit bearing trees very close to highways so the animals will not come feeding there and probably roadkill incidents will go down in future? Or is it possible for us to, at least from the road 5 to 6 or a 10 feet distance, we plant only grasslands and then we start a higher trees so the visibility increases of the driving motorist. So if there is an animal, they can see that, you know, uh, because sometimes we want to greenerize everything. We want to put green colors everywhere, but we don't think the challenges which it can post in future by doing that. So can we build in some mechanism into our actions where we foresee the challenges in a future and probably little correction factors can be brought into our actions so that the future challenges, it's not because we are always once we do it and then we start. So instead of creating more rescue centers, instead of creating more rescue efforts, can we see to that these conflicts of a road kills and a road accidents can be reduced by changing some of the methods of our plantations around our roads? So that is one point and one linkage is to just carry forward as a thought. Now I say,
Unfortunately, in urban areas, they always so much want to expand the road, and there is again a need of expanding the road. That if there is some grassland, again that will be a road.
yeah, means there is always a challenge is the against it also, how do we achieve it? But I'm just putting a question here. I don't think even
Yeah.
I am a judge at the moment to give you
No,
suggestions.
I am not saying that. I think the idea is very good, but in 4 5 years again, some other contractor will come and build the road there.
Yeah, those are our another challenges into urban planning and city development, and where we don't at all consider biodiversity as a part of urban planning. And that is the biggest challenge in urban planning today, that we don't look at urban biodiversity as a part when we plan our cities and we plan our urban planning, unfortunately, at the moment. Now, the second point which I would like to ask you is, there is a relation between city garden landscaping and lights.
Yes, almost. Everywhere we have a landscape garden, there has to have a light pool.
That's
Ye-
perfect, because we know that these gardens are going to invite wildlife there, right? The animal species from snakes to around. If you have a prey, then the predators will come. Similarly, snakes will come there. And if there are playgrounds and around and there is a good lighting and there is a good visibility, chances of snake bites, accidents happening, bee stings happening, all are little less. Okay, but I see a lot of planning, even in my own society. They want to do a big garden, but there is not a single point about lightning and cleaning up the whole thing. So creating wildscapes also need to be understood and designed in a way where we foresee these future challenges which our landscaping efforts can create. Now this is a little googly. Is there is a linkage between bird feeders and bird feeders? When I'm not talking about those bottles which we feed, but the people who feed birds, okay, all across, and the air conditioner.
Oh my God.
Okay, it's actually very simple if you look at the whole ecological principles as such. This is a typical. There is a small case study which we have done all around our localities some years back. Is when people started feeding birds all across in the societies, they just throw grains all around. So the one is the pigeons, their population explodes completely because of that. Second, we have also seen that all those grains are also eaten by rats and squirrels. Okay, and the squirrel population also explodes because in my society we have put a lot of people have earlier put bird nests, and 90% of those bird nests are occupied by squirrels. Okay, not the birds, because the whole of that bird nest is same all across. It's not depending on species to species, and so it just So what's happening, actually all air conditioning servicing companies need to put squirrels or pigeons as their mascots because their work has increased. The pigeon nesting in a air conditioned unit out of your building or out of your house, as well as, squirrels have the typical habits of hoarding. They have a satellite hoarding sale where they keep hoarding whatever they collect from food to nesting material. And I have a very good example of friend of mine. He has to do his air condition servicing every month because the unit which is out of his house, because there are a lot of squirrels, they keep nesting in his unit in that way. So, there is always a linkage. All our work which we do in urban localities either increase some population of a species, which can create a little imbalance into the society of the whole ecological society. I'm talking about not the human society as such only, So there is always linkage of our any activity with certain biodiversity aspects, and we hardly look into it as such. Water bowls for birds and malaria and dengue. Is there any linkage?
I think we have to keep those balls always every day clean, because that is what I also know, that birds and animals, they need fresh water. So don't keep it,
Yes, but
accumulated for many.
yeah, and that's so right, Shilpa. But people don't understand this. And I'm not saying they knowingly don't understand this. They don't know about it. So they keep 10 bowls of water in their galleries and all across. Okay, but they don't change the water every day. They don't wash them every day. They just keep it there. So what you are creating, you are creating a stagnant water pool, which is a ecological niche for certain insects and animals all around you. And
There
which is the
should be
insect which actually breeds into stagnant water pools are the mosquitoes.
yeah,
And particularly diseases like dengue, which actually breeds or spreads through this kind of things.
yeah.
When
There
we
should
do
be
certain good thing, yeah,
yes, sir. They should be cleaned at least once in a week.
I will say once every day,
Once,
Yeah,
yeah,
that is
probably.
yeah.
right, sir. But at least once in a week, for because that the what larva of mosquito takes almost 1 week to complete and get it out
Depending
of the
on
water.
depending on species, it's from
Yeah,
three
yeah.
four
But
days 3 to 4
okay,
days
yeah,
to more also. And
correct,
it's
correct.
not about only disease I'm talking about, but when there is an increase into the insect balance, the predator who eat on insects, their number also increases. So everything changes. It's a cascading domino effect of your action always into nature. There is no isolated incident. Everything is connected to everything else, as I was talking about. So there are many this kind of examples you can find out about what we do. So my only always thinking about these things, that when we plan something, we have to always look at what can be the future, actions out of our doing, and prepare for those actions. I'm not saying don't do these things. I'm not saying don't do the water bowls for birds, don't do the bird feeders. But when we do it, we need to understand the effects of it all happening if we don't do it properly, or we don't do it disciplinary completely. So this was, now we'll talk and we'll discuss about what you feel about urban biodiversity challenges. Why I always start thinking about this kind of challenges, because last nearly 3 decades I am into snake rescue and a snake rescue guidelines, and looking at a Sarpamitra. And throughout the years, actually, logically, if you think that you start doing education awareness, start doing, rescue, start doing teaching people, the rescue activity over the years need to be decreased, right? If you are in the same area, but it doesn't happen. Every year, it's the same number of snakes we catch from one place and release into some another place. Every year, we say the same injured animals, same injured wildlife in our cities. So something is only, we are just reacting to the something which is happening. We are not taking a proactive actions about stopping the cause itself. By studying the urban biodiversity, its requirements, and sometimes you have to take a hard decisions. You have to take a hard decision. Your emotional quotient should not be decision maker when it comes to management of urban biodiversity. Thanks, Shilpa. We are open for questions and discussion.
Okay, thanks. So, thanks, Kedar. This was very crisp presentation where you have, planted lot many questions and thought-provoking, questions actually. So, even if for me also, I can look back to my actions and start thinking. So, yeah, that's really nice. So let's open the platform also for question answer. So participants, you can unmute yourselves and ask directly. Vasudha, you can ask your question.
Yes, sir. It was an enlightening thing, I say. But I think one of the main concerns I have is this is not brought to the students. When I see in the children in my society being afraid of cats or even any insect, they are not comfortable with it. You have to be aware, but not afraid of it. And I suppose this is something which we could change. Maybe people make aware. It's not only the kids, that the kids don't learn them on their own. They do that because the people around them, the elders, do that. So don't you think we should be having some awareness program? Maybe now that the national education policy is coming along, we could have some community service to the students, so that they could, to familiarize with them, and then they take responsibility for what they are doing. I think that's just one thought, but I really liked your lecture. Thank you.
Yeah, Vasudha ji, I think what you said is completely right. We, in our education and awareness, we keep telling people more about the big mammals or the, which is also needed, like you are into national parks, tigers and lions and everything, but we don't teach them about our easily found wildlife all around us, unfortunately.
Exactly.
And so this urban biodiversity part, including into your premium education, will help a lot to people understand about generally most of the people always think that wild animals are not around us, they are in wild.
No,
but that is a
case.
complete misconception. All around us there are wild animals.
Yes, we have mongooses coming into our society. Yes. And I mean, the way people respond is it is going to jump on you and bite you. But at the other end, you always see that it is if you are able to see a mongoose, that means there is a snake around, and you need to be aware.
Okay, so that is also another misconception which we have, that mongoose will be there only if snake is around. Yes, mongoose feeds on snakes, but mongoose also feeds on lot of other food sources. Okay. Not necessarily only snakes. It's also sometimes a scavenger where it may come and eat the meat thrown out of your house also.
Okay.
So a lot of these, we always say, snakes eat live prey, they catch their own prey. But in urban cities, I have seen checkered keelback feeding on the fish pieces thrown out of fish market. Many times we have photographed it, we have video. We have a lot of pictures of snakes eating roadkill frogs. So sometimes we have a very linear, straight thinking, which is not a right. The food part is very, very opportunistic for many of the animals.
Okay. So what do you think now? This is just a thought, sir. So if you could have some booklet put together regarding all this, I mean, how to approach rather these animals that we find quite often. Okay, there's these misconceptions that are there, that we could put them across to the students, make them aware of it. Probably it would help.
Yeah, it will surely help. Probably Shilpa can take an action plan for
whatever. We could have a booklet, a small booklet, which is not very, or even a film maybe, or an audio video visual maybe, which could be catchy, could be animation maybe, where this idea is focused on, and we could have at least an awareness program running through for a start, I should say.
Yes, yes.
What Shilpa, in my many of these working through different peoples, I have found out more than the booklets and everything in a complexes societies or a big institutional campus. Information boards put it at a strategic places in gardens and everywhere helps more because more people read it and probably in a local languages also.
Right, right.
So if you could have some material, maybe we could share it with our students. I mean, it could be a ESS program rather, environmental societies. One of the teachers is very good at it. So if we have some
Yes.
material which we could share it with the students, it could be a class activity or something like. I mean, we could have something to students to think about it and probably come up with a program like that.
Yes. Vasudha ji, you are from Symbiosis School?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I am from Symbiosis International School, ISIS,
Okay,
Agaman
okay,
Nagar. We
okay.
teach an IB program. So that is
Yeah.
something which is called as environmental sciences, and our teacher is very proactive with it.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
not, she is.
So,
So
yeah,
yes,
we can connect on this definitely.
please do.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. So, any questions? If anyone has, you can please ask.
Shilpa, I will also would like to, kind of request your biodiversity say, because I know last so many years what efforts you have made into your whole biodiversity action plan of your Symbiosis campus and everything. So, is there any possibility to do when you started and now what changes have happened, uh, and kind of we could have done this better, and so these challenges wouldn't have happened now ecologically, yeah, not the human interference in a
Okay.
change. Anything can be a because that can give us a lot of data about today. The biggest problem with the urban biodiversity work is data deficiency,
Right.
and you probably have a unique position to have a longer time data because I know you are doing that,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
recording and documentation for many
Yes,
years now.
yeah, I have actually. Yeah, yeah, means it's actually eye-opening kind of observations, but we need to put it in a scientific way, and that is, I think I have to do it because when we started in 2016 and
Mhm.
how we took it ahead, and today in 2021 when we look back what has been changed and where we did some intervention for restoration some of the habitats what
Mhm.
happened, and again in some of the restoration projects things did not go well and what we lost. So
Yeah.
yes, yes, we can do that, and we can share this again on this kind of open platform so people can understand what was there, what happened, and again how it got changed. For
Uh-huh.
one small example, if I want to tell you here, we have this water body in our campus, Bandara. You
Mhm.
must have seen
Mhm.
when you had come to our campus. So they built this Bandara for the consumption of human, whoever
Yeah.
are in the campus, for campus only. But when biodiversity cell came into existence, we thought to restore it through making the banks shallow, adding some aquatic vegetation to
Mhm.
attract water birds. So since 2000, you know, 16 or 15, we got to see that there is a water body. Restoration happened in 17, 18, and then in 18 and 19, 20, we saw birds coming because restoration is a success story. We can see
Mhm.
more migratory birds started coming, more normal residential species started coming. Now since we have increased our campus development, for example we have now recently started our hospital and even medical college, so more human foot fall,
Yeah.
huh? So more water we need.
Mhm.
So now we don't allow our water body water level go down,
Okay.
which we used to do prior. Huh?
Okay.
So in the month of October, November, December, water goes down, and they
Mhm.
automatically used to get open banks and marshy land.
Yeah.
But now, because we have more footfall and we need more water, we keep on pumping water regularly from
Mhm.
nearby river source.
Mhm.
And so the water level is always high since last 1 year.
Right.
And so immediately this last year, we saw less number of
Lesson number.
birds coming
Yeah.
and landing in the campus. So that's immediate effect we can see in whatever we saw in 16, and then after restoration, and
Yeah.
again after, changing our actions.
Yeah, because it's always have an effect. Something will have always effect on somewhere, and we always work on biodiversity because it's needed for our physical well-being, our mental well-being, our societal and cultural well-being. All where biodiversity is needed. You know, I was talking with somebody about societal and cultural well-being about a biodiversity because we have so many things into our culture which is actually connected to the biodiversity. Now, I was talking with somebody and I have to explain to them, to a group of women, about how biodiversity affects cultures, kind of thing. So I just asked them, if all the banyan trees are lost, will you be able to do the Vata Savitri? And they started thinking, no. I said, that's the effect on culture also, a loss of biodiversity. Similarly, so biodiversity is intervene into complete our human life as such. And we need to think it as a complete aspect of biodiversity when you do any kind of planning or a conservation. Okay.
So those like 25 people who are here and listening to us, and we are even though most of you are silently listening to this, I just wanted to request all of you that whatever just this thought Kedar started with, that we have this cultural and cultural, what aspects you said, Kedar? Cultural,
Societal and cultural,
society, and you said one word, mental well-being.
mental well-being
Okay,
also.
so I just want to, provoke people here who are, because very recently management asked me to produce document that how a biodiversity of campus is helping the mental or well-being, or as a health promoting campus,
Yes.
how it can be connected. So I would just started thinking how, scientific way I should write it down. So can those who are here today, all 25 people, can you help me to understand the relation of biodiversity and health? Immediate, something very simple. Can you help me out for this? Uh, a simple one-liner also will help me to
The
understand.
soothing effect of greenery around makes you feel good. So that is a very positive feel factor. That is a very general
Okay, thanks,
answer.
Gitanjali. So I'll write that also. So see, this is immediately whatever I am going to, present in my document, because
It
I,
also provides a creative inspiration to a person when they're in a beautiful landscape. So
okay, creative experience,
inspiration.
It's food.
inspiration. Okay,
If I may say, it's food related. For example, for my culture, say I'm using durva or another the flowers that are there. I also use it as food. Okay. For example, I am a South Indian. If I make idlis, I prefer to make it in the drone, which is made out of the jackfruit leaves.
okay,
Yeah. And the champa leaves that are there, I use it as a wrapping for my food. I mean, to steam it in, or a banana leaf maybe. So it is something which is connected to my food and my well-being.
okay, great. That's good. Thanks. Thanks. I'm just writing everything because I really need help in this. Me, I'm
And
working in this
also, my
all
daughter is very
time.
much interested into art, and also she'll collect all the different flowers and even the people tree, the leaves that are there to remove out the chlorophyll, and then the jali that is comes out of it to make paintings and all. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
it is something which is very much related to well-being of her, I believe. Art.
Hi, ma'am. I would like to say something.
Yes.
Tanvi this side.
Okay.
So, I'd like to say that, for example, when we go out in nature or personally from my side, when I see such huge mountains or see such huge trees, then I feel that my problems are so insignificant in front of that. And we have such amazing nature around us, such amazing things, and we are just a small part of it. So, I mean, um, our problems are just a small part of this universe and they can get solved immediately. And another thing is patience. I mean, I had really small amount of patience, but going into this, diving into this world of especially flora, it has taught me to wait till the right time. I mean, it has been 3 weeks. I was trying to get a sighting of Gloriosa superba, and finally, after 3 weekends, I got one yesterday. So again, it has been teaching me to wait for the right time, and things will fall into place. You just have to wait for it, and it will happen.
This is wonderful. Thanks, Tanvi, for sharing
Yeah.
your
Thank you.
experience.
Yes, ma'am. Like, am I
Yeah.
audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am, I also want to share my experience. Like, I'm from Rishikesh, so you may know that I very much connected to the nature and everything. So, as due to the past 2 years, due to the COVID, like there have been very less tourist interaction in the city. So, I have saw so many changes. Like, if you will go to the road, you will just see the butterflies in the road. As of now, in this time, and even the birds, like the birds which I never saw in the city, they all are like in morning at 4 o'clock near my windows, all birds are there. Even right now they are chirping and all. So even like 2 days back, monkeys and everything, they started to coming here. So I feel like the humans, like they have impacted so much to the society. Like I'm living here in Rishikesh from last 8 to 9 years, but I never saw this much like wildlife invention in the city. And even last year, like in the Ganges River, you might see fishes. Like there were so many gold fishes and everything. But as soon as the people started going there, it again reduced. But now, whenever if there is like something and people don't go into the river and all, you will feel river fishes and everything. So I feel like we humans are impacted so much to this biodiversity. But if we can, as sir told, if we will feel the need of there and we started living together, so we can feel the beauty of the nature, which I feel like it literally gives me so many keys to the mental health. And I do not feel like to go outside of Rishikesh now. Like there's so much peace here in the city.
Nice. So it gives you peace. Thanks. Kedar, can
Hmm.
you talk about this particular one comment in the chat box, especially the second one? The flowers blooming along with the
The grass
grasses
can be
can be
arranged
arranged
as
as
a
a flower
flower arrangements
arrangement.
in building to continue the piece inside out. See, this is the typical or cultural practice to take this biodiversity in our house. Probably that also connected to the mental well-being, as you were discussing, as well as the cultural impact of a biodiversity and the utilization of biodiversity for betterment of our life, which is happening for thousands of years, Shilpa. And that is one aspect which we always do when we try to do something like plantation, flowering, and everything. And that's, I think everybody agree to that we need all this beauty all around us for our mental well-being. Now the second question which I have raised in today's talk, when we need all this beauty all around us, are we prepared to face the challenges this beauty also will give you, like occasional mungus, occasional snakes, other animals coming around it, and are we prepared for it? you know so when you talked about those 4 point, I think biodiversity is needed for: one is our physical health, second is our mental health, third is the societal and cultural health, and fourth also economical health, which sometimes we forget. If we have a sudden bloom of a lot of rodent population, they are going to destroy your you know food to everything. But if there is a well ecological balance because of a good biodiversity all around us, like there is a population of snakes, there is a population of birds which feed on the rats, there will always be a control, in kind of thing. And so a good natural settings of a biodiversity always helps in our well-being completely. But in our human altered environment, many times that whole natural settings are skewed because of our interventions, more kind of emotional interventions, you know. Now, when Priyanka said something about Rishikesh, I heard only one word: goldfishes. Now, goldfishes are completely exotic, you know, and if they are found in a natural rivers and water, it's a challenge for me as a biodiversity. Okay, in that it looks may beautiful and may good, but it's a challenge. So there is a lot of exotic fishes has naturalized into our rivers and streams and impacted our local fish biodiversity. There is this red snided turtle has naturalized in so many places that our soft shell turtle and everybody probably have a competition for resources, and that whole biodiversity has changed, you know. And so we need to look at the beauty. Yes, it is there, but while doing that, are we skewing the biodiversity? Are we affecting a natural setting of biodiversity in such a way that in the long term it will affect our physical, mental well-being more than only for that beauty part of it? You know? So it's there. Means I completely agree with that the beauty always gives us a peace and other things. But while arriving to that beauty, we need to think about future also. Just if you do all the flowering which doesn't have a, you know, pollination or a pollens and other things, so the bee population goes down, probably the all pollination goes down in that case also. So we need to find out, and for all that thing, I think the you are in a unique position to study those biodiversity changes happening in a micro environment of Symbiosis campus, you know. And like you said, the water body, how you have seen the effect on certain things. So similarly, any kind of plantation, what kind of effect? I'm not saying anything is good or bad here, okay? It's relative. But as I said, there is always a interactions and a different effect of one thing to all.
Yeah, right, right. Nature with its biodiversity often certain therapies like sunbathing, bathing, walking on the yeah, yeah, right. So even one thing I'm feeling like that nowadays there is also a kind of so much of bombarding from all the sides, you know. So people are not even getting to understand, what is a good species like, and what is exotic, what is native, and everything is, I think, coming up very heavy in front of them. So I think systematic, a small percolating information, if we can, send to or try to give to the people, then it may, help people to understand urban biodiversity in a good way.
Yeah. So the best thing I think anybody can do is that if they can just create a biodiversity index of their localities,
Can you
what is
just,
found there.
yeah,
Like
biodiversity
take an
index?
example of Symbiosis campus. You already have a checklist of birds found in your locality. You already have a checklist of, similarly, if you have a checklist of fishes found in your water bodies and everything, probably there you can say that this was an endemic indigenous species, this is
Mm.
an exotic species which is naturalized into this area.
Mm.
Similarly, like in a plants, probably you already have an indigenous and exotic list of your campus, you know. So probably when you do, if that data is available, either you or anybody who is there after that wants to do some plantation or wants to do some work, they can have that data as a basis about which species to do and what to do, you know.
So I guess we can come to the end of this session. If anyone has any question, they can definitely ask. Otherwise, meantime, I would like to suggest people, because now everyone is in their own home, or even students and other participants also. So for campus, as you suggested, I will keep continuing whatever I'm doing and
Yeah.
see how it can help whatever biodiversity checklist and index I have with me, and how I can help it around.
Mm.
I would like to request people that you can just have a small checklist of the birds which you can see from your balcony, a small, a regular checklist of butterflies which you see in your garden, and keep it, uploading in different citizen science
Sorry,
websites.
ma'am, your voice is breaking.
The voice.
Probably
Okay.
her internet connection is lost.
Yes. So, by meantime, I just request everyone to please.
Hello, can you hear me now?